Welcome to Season 2 of the Project Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer. As many of you know, I am a cult survivor myself. For anyone interested, you can hear the story of how I got in and how I got out in Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. The beginning of this year, 2023, actually marks my 11 years of being out, and I am so super grateful for the ways my life has unfolded since. I now work with survivors of coercive control, and I'm going to take a moment here to define this term, as one of my heart's desires is to help society at large better understand coercive control in cases that are not just culty, but across the globe I view coercive control as a social issue. It's at the heart of cases where women and girls are murdered. We find coercive control in one-to-one relationships that are intimate, in gangs, sex trafficking, and cults of all types. I have a master's in the psychology of coercive control, and I'm just beginning a new element of my career as an expert witness for legal cases that involve coercive control. As a certified trauma professional, I work with survivors. I'm especially excited to be offering a group survivor program for cult and religious abuse recovery. So this is not a support group, but rather a healing program. It's based on my certification in the incredible work of Dr. Jilly Jenkinson, who gathered decades of research on survivors to create a body of work that I would consider to be the most comprehensive and flexible approach I've come across in this field. We will meet every other week for 6 months, and registration will open in February of 2023 for those interested. Lastly, I am also a research associate at Salford University and explore topics related to coercive control. So let's jump back into a basic understanding of coercive control before I introduce the next episode. Coercive control is a strategic pattern of behavior designed to exploit, control, create dependency, and dominate. The victim's everyday existence is micromanaged, and their space for action, as well as potential as a human being, is limited and controlled by the abuser. Initially, the victim may be drawn into the relationship with love bombing and charm. Then gaslighting, isolation, economic control, and financial abuse can take place alongside rules and regulations that are gradually introduced over time and change at the whim of the abuser. The victim knows there are consequences if rules are broken, and they apply to the victim rather than the perpetrator, creating a double standard. Over time, coercively controlling behavior erodes the victim's sense of self, their confidence, self-esteem, agency, and autonomy. The abuser creates an unreal world of contradiction, confusion, and fear. It may be helpful to know that 51% of victims do not even know that they are being abused, manipulated, and controlled. Coercive control correlates significantly to serious harm, and in many cases, in intimate partner violence, it precedes homicide. These can be difficult topics to grapple with, so I truly hope that this podcast helps to protect you and those you love with helpful voices and information. If you appreciate the podcast, please let us know by subscribing and comment with kindness. And always think critically, trust your intuition, and be free. Today, I'd like to introduce you to a very unique and powerful voice amidst the Project Hope podcast interviewees. As you're likely aware, in this season 2, I've wanted to bring the podcast back into a focus of its original hope, which has been to really speak to the families and others who have a loved one in a group of high control, high demand, and provide them with both helpful information, survivor voices, as we learn so much from those who share their stories, but also to really give voice to those who are affected and impacted deeply by the loved one who enters such a group. These are the voices of those who suffered terrible pain that is often misunderstood or perhaps underappreciated, leaving individuals with extraordinary grief that is also typically very alienating, leaving them feeling alone and isolated. So on that note, we have an extraordinary person with us today by the name of Sally M. Meyer. In this first and part of the second episode of this 3-part series, you will hear me refer to her as Sarah Elizabeth Rose. This is her pen name, as she has written 2 books describing her experience that was captured by handwritten journal entries prior to uploading to the computer. The names of her books are Ordinarily Sarah and Ordinarily Sarah Book 2, Relentless. And both links can be found in the show notes. Sarah's books capture the extended period of time that she journeys from the discovery that her daughter Annie is in a pseudo-Christian cult that no one detects as unhealthy until she and the family are cut off from communication. Sarah seeks endlessly, perhaps I should say relentlessly, for ways to get her daughter back. She becomes a grandmother during this time and carries the pain of not knowing these little ones while knowing they exist. She struggles with emotions that certainly will be shared by many others who have been through a similar experience. But Sarah also has a unique element to her journey, as it is also one that tests her faith in God and her role serving as a minister in her parish. You will hear the spirit within which Sally shares with us, and her desire to help others is crystal clear. She and her husband Dennis began the Lullabye Foundation, whose mission statement is, "Community by community, the Lullabye Foundation partners with schools and others to identify, lift up, and level the playing field for children and youth, enabling them to have experiences which would otherwise for them be only a dream." Please do consider supporting the Lullabye Foundation. All links are in the podcast show notes, but they also have a Facebook page where you can track the wonderful work they're doing. As many of you will understand, cults breed secrecy and force those on the outside who are connected to those on the inside to be bound to walking on eggshells with their loved one, if they're allowed to connect at all. This results in family members and others invested in the cult member to be forced to live in aspects of hiding. They must hide that they are doing anything to get the member out. They must hide any public communications or alliances with anyone associated with being against the group. These ones often have so much they are considering, like going to the police and having things go public, at risk of destroying any possibility of reconnection with their cult member. So it is actually not entirely unusual that these family members and others closely connected to the cult member might use aliases on social accounts or other places in an attempt to hide identity and not give their loved one any further reason to cut off connection. So in Sally's case, we have acknowledged that an alias was used to write her books. I thought it might be nice for you all as our audience to know that during the course of this podcast and the multiple times we gathered together, Sally decided to go public with her real name alongside her pen name. This is why you will hear me refer to her as Sarah and then switch over to Sally. I know you will enjoy this unique voice as author, mother, grandmother, advocate, speaker, and so much more. We welcome you to this part 1 of a 3-part series with Sally Meyer, also known as Sarah Elizabeth Rose. Welcome, Sarah Elizabeth Rose. It is an absolute pleasure to have you with us today on the Project Hope podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I feel blessed that we've found each other and are connecting with each other in a real way, and that hopefully the book, the ideas that I've written about, and the feelings and different things like that I've written about will help others in the future. Or yes. If not now, right now.
Absolutely. And I'm sure they will. I mean, I really think, Sarah, that that's one of the most kind of powerful things about the book is that because I think also there were these journal entries that you had, it's such a powerful element to the book, the ways in which you really express your feelings and describe the feelings, because as we said, it's such a unique situation and the feelings can be so extreme. And I just think the way you beautifully expressed things, really, it unveils the level of pain and, all the other feelings too, the anger and all of that.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that so much. And I found that when I'm writing, I can go deep. When I'm talking, I don't necessarily go that deep. I must be somehow protecting myself. I don't think I'll have that with you, but when I'm talking with other people, I don't go as deep. But everything just came out with my journals I'm even surprised at how deep I went when I was reading. I just kind of put it out of my mind for a while, and it's much deeper than I would express just talking about.
Kind of time with oneself where things can just pour out in this kind of unfettered way. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that happened and that we have this. Jennifer. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's begin with just a little bit of an overview about kind of what this group was and kind of the time frame that, like how many years this was going on for you all.
Okay. There was the most unusual thing that I learned. I belong to a group that meets on Friday mornings with other parents who have children that are in these kinds of groups. And that's helped me, has helped me be brave. But one thing I found out that's very unique is that the grooming period took a long time. I don't think most cases the grooming period takes more than a year, maybe. This took 3 years of grooming before they finally told her to cut off all relationships with her family. And so I don't know, maybe you've talked to people where the grooming is that long, but because it was so long and so gradual, I kept thinking, oh, well, this will pass. She's just having a bad mood today, or she's just grumpy or whatever, and this can't be. So I went into severe denial during those first 3 years. I did not believe, one part of me would not believe what was happening, even though there were quite a few strange things that happened during that 3-year period. I kept denying it that anything was wrong, but there was a little voice inside that kept saying to me, maybe you should dig a little deeper here. Something is not quite right. So I was kind of between two different mindsets here. And I think that's the very first thing that people need to know if they have a child caught up in a group that is very controlling, or in the future, if they do, they may go through denial too. And I think that's normal. But when I look back and think it took 3 years, I could have, perhaps if I'd known more, I could have tried to intervene in those 3 years, but instead of just denying, oh, it's just a mood, it'll pass, but it just kept getting worse and worse. So I think that's important for people to know, because they may go through denial also. Denial doesn't help anything. It just makes things worse.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that, and I think that's really helpful for people to hear. Certainly, denial is probably an option that a lot of family members are grappling with initially. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, I just had this thought, do you think that there was anything, it's also significant, Sarah, that you and your husband at the time, and I believe presently, but at the time were ministers. Mm-hmm. And so I wondered actually if your daughter being involved in something that I assume you were told it was kind of Christian based. Mm-hmm. I wondered if that might be a little bit of the denial as well, like that that one would, the way we sometimes talk about how regular therapists might not pick up on religious abuse because they tend to think of churches as positive experiences for most people. So we sometimes find that those unhealthy patterns aren't detected by them, unless, again, you're, kind of educated about this whole coercion and all these things,
that's a good word,
cascade of what comes together, so I was curious about that.
It took me a long time, and my denial instincts were really strong. I just, it was right in plain sight, and I still would deny it until the phone call that I got on in March of 1996, when she called and said she couldn't see me anymore. Then the denial, at least most of it, went down the tubes, but I still denied as to how bad it was and what the situation really was. I just needed more information. You're right. I thought, okay, this is a Christian group. We're Christian pastors. What can be wrong with this particular church? But it ended up that it wasn't Christian at all. Everything was twisted. My daughter tells me today everything got twisted. She would not let the others read the Bible. She would do all the interpretations, and she'd twist things. But they believed her. It was just amazing. I'm amazed when I look back to see how much was right in front of my face that I missed. And today I regret that, but it is what it is. So if I can help, and my husband and I can help in any way others that may be going through this, we would be happy to do that. And the other piece I want to give people is hope. There's always hope. No matter what you're going through, there's always hope. And I can get into that a little bit more later. But after the denial totally disappears, because you can't deny it anymore, then you start thinking, okay, how are we going to get through this? Where is the hope when it's so dark? Where is the hope when you don't really know if God's answering your prayers? Where is hope? Where is hope? But there is hope. So I want to give that, tell that to people too. There is always hope. And one of the strongest things then I did after the denial period was over. I kind of break it up into periods, but that first 3-year period was really a denial period. I got to the point where I was praying to God that, okay, I will accept that I may never see them again, but I just pray that when it's their time to pass on, that they will have enough belief and enough hope and enough faith so that that my husband and I and my daughter and her he's now an ex-husband, her husband at the time, and all the kids can all meet in heaven. So every night I would pray, now I lay them down to sleep. I pray thee, Lord, their souls to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray thee, Lord, their souls to take. And I just did that prayer over and over. And that did give me hope. It gave me hope that, okay, I might not see him in this lifetime, but I will see him in the next. And that was huge for me. Yeah. So, yeah, you got your denial, you got your hope. There's just all kinds of different feelings and words that go into this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. So just to get back, so how many years was it from kind of beginning to them getting out?
Well, if you count the first 3 years of grooming, and they weren't totally in yet, they were at the church. They were doing all kinds of chores. They'd work during the day or take care of the babies during the day. And then they'd work at night. They'd have late night meetings, like at 2, 3 in the morning. I used to ask my daughter, well, what do the babies do? And she didn't really ever answer, but she said, well, we're learning stuff. At 3 in the morning? Yeah, it's that she teaches us lessons then. Okay, you'll have to put me back on track. Well,
yeah, well, also interesting because you said interesting for people to note that this is also a female.
A female. And this went on for 3 years. And during those 3 years, it was the denial, and there are all kinds of strange things. And then the phone call. And then I knew for sure that something wasn't right. And although at the same time, I was still in some denial, just not quite as bad as I was before. I started writing the journal after that last phone call. But I did think back at the first 3 years as to what was going on. So that came from memory. And so how long? Well, if you count those 3 years, here's another interesting twist. It was the 18th of March, about between 10 and 11 in the morning, 1996. And remember these dates. I try to be as consistent as I can, but these dates are not the real dates. But it was exactly 18 years later, to the day, to the time that my daughter called me out of the blue and said, Mom, I've been looking for you. I've been trying to find you. I want to see you. So I don't know if there's any significance, but that would bring it to 21 years. And then this is another weird thing. She got out after a year before she called me. So she was out in the 17th, when the 17th year finished. She and her family got out. I had no idea they were out. She told me later that she was afraid of me because she had been brainwashed, whatever, to think that we were evil.
Yeah.
That she was afraid of me. So it took her a whole year before she made that phone call. So that last year, even though she was out. So I don't know whether you count that year or not, but if you count that year, then it's 21 years. If you don't count that year, it's 20 years. But she was still gone, and she was still under the influence during that last year.
And also, this too is so representative of what others might experience. Yes, because I think, sometimes there really is a delay. I mean, for almost everybody leaving, there's, there's a deconstruction process that just needs to happen, right? You're still mentally in to some extent or another when you leave. And, many of us say, even many, many years later, we're still seeing layers or connections. But I love that you shared that, Sarah, because I can imagine that would also be an area where families might feel hurt, or loved ones might feel really hurt.
Yes.
And for them to know that it's really not about them. It's much more about the individual leaving and having to sort through all the messages that they received around family. I mean, if they are not speaking of family, there were messages of negativity given to them about family. So they have to kind of let those clouds part a little bit in order to even reach out,
Yeah.
And I know it's so, I don't want to jump ahead, but I also I love that, that this is an incredible story of hope. I mean, just processing, Sarah, that it was that many years.
To the day, to the hour, there's got to be some significance with that. We don't know what, maybe we'll never know, but that is just so odd.
So odd, but so amazing also that I just happen to know, and I want to give you a chance to speak to this at some point. Maybe it's a little later on in the story, but just that the level of closeness that is now between you and your daughter and the grandkids and everything is a very close one. So,
Yes. And I could go into a little bit what you said about family, unless you want to talk about it later, I can. But with the family, 2 of her siblings really had problems when my daughter came back.
Yeah.
2 and 1 still. So she came out, and 6 years ago, I think it was. And the older sibling still, she can't forgive the one that was in the cult, the daughter that was in a cult, because of how she hurt us all. And she cannot forgive her. And the other daughter, my youngest daughter, who lives in California, she's a little bit more open, but not totally so. So it does. And that just hurts me so much. They will never realize. And I don't know if I want them to realize how much it hurts that they can't just come together. So, and my daughter that was in the cult, she says it's been real hard connecting up with friends. See, she left when she was 17 or 18 years old and started the grooming process. So she was really young.
Very.
So some of her high school people that she's hoped that she would have contact with now, that's been very slow. And some really don't want to have anything to do with her. But she has reunited with some of them. So that's good. And I think she realizes things are never going to be the same. You just can't go back and think things are going to be the same. They're not. They're going to be different. Annie and I are very, very close now. Very, very close. I think, but I'm not sure. She seems to appear to me to have a lot of guilt feelings, a lot of remorse. And I think that she just wants to be close with me. And she wants to be my daughter and for me to be her mama. And it's just hard all the way around. And there's just so many emotions flying everywhere. But she and I are very close. And I hope and pray that one day her siblings will become close with her too. May not be in my lifetime, but I hope at some point. But that's part of the reason why the family doesn't really want to read the book. They were all hurt. They don't, what I hear from especially those two daughters is, oh, why should I read that? We went through it all. Why should I have to read about it?
Yeah.
Without really realizing that there's more to it. And maybe it would heal a little bit if they read it. So yes, family is really affected.
Yeah. And I think also, in the book, there are moments where your true, tender, deep, motherly feelings come forth, and that alone might be healing. And I also, and everybody, we need to allow everyone to have space to approach these things in different ways, because sometimes, people know themselves best, what they can and can't handle.
Yeah.
So
I've decided not to pursue that. It's just, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. The anger I feel from the oldest daughter towards me, even when I brought it up, has been pretty powerful. She just kind of loses it. So I've decided, okay, I'm just not, I love her too. I love all three of my daughters. They're all, the two that weren't in the cult are responding in different ways than I would want them to, but maybe that's normal under the situation. It was a long, long time since they were away. My youngest daughter just turned 40. And she said, one of the things she told me recently was, I don't even know Annie. I was only 15 when she left. Oh. So, now she's 40. Yeah. So it's very hard. And I don't have any answers except for I have decided not to push it. And I just pray about it. And hopefully, eventually, they'll all come together. But it's hard.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was just on the phone with a parent today, and we were discussing, she was asking me and kind of sharing her pain around her daughter who is not in the group, and just how, she doesn't understand cult dynamics. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't, of course, feel hurt, of course, you're going to kind of put that person responsible. And so I think so often that really, thank goodness we've got these books. Sometimes it's an option for somebody to get educated reading a book, and other resources, of course. But again, thank you so much for bringing that up, because it's something that so many families are struggling with, and we just don't hear that much about it.
People don't like to talk about it. Yeah. One of the things one of my daughters says is, she says it to me rather angrily, and it doesn't make me love her any less. I love her fiercely, but she'll say, it was her own fault. She made her own choices. And that's not really true, but I can't get her to understand the dynamics of the cult. Yeah. And she doesn't. So maybe someday, who knows, maybe someday she'll read the book and understand what the dynamics are, or some other book that talk about cults and what the dynamic is, and all the I don't like the word brainwashing, but I don't know what other word to use. Sometimes I tease the others in my Friday morning group. And I tell them, I said, these leaders of the cults, they must go to Brainwashing 101 because it's all the same thing. You bring them in and you're so nice and wonderful and everything. And then once they're in and things are cut off, you threaten them that they can't leave. And but how they do it is so similar from one oppressive group to another. It's whoever the leader is somehow gets so much power over their victims that the victims, my daughter told me she was afraid to leave. She told me she'd been wanting to leave for years, but she was afraid because this leader had told her, and she has 5 kids. She had 6. That's a whole nother story, but 5. Her leader told her, okay, you can leave, but we're keeping the children. So she stayed. It's just incredible. And she believed it. That's the thing. She believed everything this woman said, and that the woman was totally out in left field with some of the things she said. But
yes,
can you imagine? No wonder she stayed. Yeah, I don't mean to get off into tangents, but
no, it's a great tangent.
Things are important.
That was a great tangent because it's true. Really, Sarah, in every single one of these groups, there is undoubtedly fear created around some message of leaving, and that may take various forms in different groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually, of course, if there's any sort of religious bent, God is used. In that.
Yeah.
God will strike you down.
Yes.
This is the only path. We have the answer. Anything outside of us is, you are doomed, my personal favorite of a lot of the early ones is you'll become a prostitute, you'll become a drug addict, all these things are promised they will become, or that they'll just, enter into the demise of how horrible they were before they were saved.
Yeah. I believe it. They'll say anything. Now, where do they get these suggestions? I don't know, unless there's a course out there somewhere for these leaders. But another thing the leader told my daughter was that if she leaves, she'll burn up. She'll have some kind of accident where she will burn up. She will die in a fire. Yeah. My daughter Annie was scared to death to leave.
Yeah. Right. And then when you use the kids as well. Such a powerful tool, of manipulation for the mothers in particular. Fathers as well, but it is just heartbreaking. Yeah,
it is.
I wondered if you might want to read the prologue of the book, or I'm happy to read it, but I feel like it is an incredible expression of kind of this moment. I think you write this at that kind of 3-year mark when you realize, I just got cut off.
Yeah.
Furious.
Exactly. Okay, I'll read it. If for some reason I can't get through it, I'll ask you to help me.
Perfect. Tag team.
The dark angel took away everything, and I refer to this woman not as an angel of light, but as a dark angel, something very sinister. The dark angel took away everything. She took away my child. She took away my grandchild. And she took away all of the grandchildren to come. She took away my work. I couldn't really function. She took away my purpose for life, which was my work. She took away joy. She took away tears that fall. There was a long time I couldn't even cry. She took away sleep at night. She took away peace at daybreak. She took away my family. She took away my family to be. She took away memories. She took away the present. She took away color and light. And she took away laughter. She took away pieces of my heart, and she took away slices of my soul. She took away the world as I once knew it, and she took away my courage to rebuild it. Most terrible of all, she almost took away my faith, and she nearly took away God. That, because I'm a pastor, that was the most horrible thing. Let me read a little bit more. She, meaning the dark angel, works for the enemy, for the prince of darkness. She is a dark angel. There are others just like her. All of them are destroyers. All of them work for the prince of darkness, which in my mind, since I'm a pastor and I study the Bible, is Satan himself. A legion of destroyers swooped down from the heavens on March 26th. Oh, it's the 26th, 1996. The terrible day the sky turned black. It was the day that my daughter called to say that her relationship with us, her family, was finished, done, perhaps forever. One of these destroyers had come into our lives years before my daughter made that call, entering our lives as counterfeit light, appearing to be caring, loving, and wise. This dark angel was also beautiful to look at. In reality, she was a wolf disguised as a lamb, and we had unknowingly welcomed her into our lives. She had eaten with us at our dining room table. My family had not recognized her for who she really was, and we were all taken in. And that was the leader of the group. This dark one had been stalking my family for at least 3 years. She had been seducing my daughter and her husband, promising them great things if they followed her. But the leader deceived them, and when the right moment came, she gave orders to my daughter and her husband to cut out their pasts, and they did, leaving their shattered families behind. They even made them throw out all their pictures, their albums, anything from the past. These dark ones, because I believe there are more than one dark forces out there. There are many dark forces out there that work for Satan. These dark ones are adept at hiding who they really are. They may hide unseen in our homes behind smiling faces and false words. They may hide in our schools behind teachers' desks. They may hide in our parks, sitting on benches while they watch for prey. They may give speeches in our public buildings or flourish in our church pulpits. And as they pose as counterfeit light, they wait for orders from their prince, orders to destroy. The prince of darkness, he's above all these other dark forces. The prince of darkness wants our souls. My daughter, March 26, 1996. My daughter, her husband, and their only child vanished the day the sky turned black. On this day, their souls crumbled like dead moths. Their bodies were left hollow, lifeless, their eyes unseen. Their mouths were closed shut. Perhaps one day I will tell the story, but only when I am brave enough. For now, I must remain silent, lest the telling of what I saw infuriates the prince of darkness, the enemy, lest this enemy send the dark ones after me. And I got that little prayer in there. Now I laid them down to sleep. I pray thee, Lord, their souls to keep. And if they die before they wake, I pray thee, Lord, their souls to take. I don't know how, I was a little nervous, so I don't know how I read that, but
that was beautiful, Sarah. So beautiful. I think those words speak for themselves.
I hope so. And I hope that whoever might hear this or read the books, I hope, if nothing else, the prologue will make them understand that they're not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not alone. There are others out there. There probably, we don't know, maybe hundreds of families out there that are going through this. We don't know that for sure. But one thing I have learned is there are different kinds of cults. My daughter was in theoretically a Christian cult, but it wasn't a religious cult, but it wasn't. It was just sounded good to begin with. But there are political cults, there's musical cults, there's a horseback riding cult. There's just so many different cults that I've learned about in this Zoom meeting on Friday mornings. But the leaders all have the same thing. They want power. They'll do anything to get it, including making them fearful of all kinds of things. And I don't know if all of them do this or not, but my daughter Annie said that the leader knows their thoughts. She can read their minds. So if she thinks that one of her people has had a bad thought against her or whatever in the cult, they'll get punished. So it's just so bizarre. But my daughter believed it all. She believed it. That's how much power these people have. It's unbelievable.
Right. I think actually this is a great segue if you don't mind me reading something.
Oh, that'd be great.
It's appropriate timing, and I think in terms of, this phase that we're in right now, as you and your husband find out that you won't be speaking to your daughter.
Yeah.
You say, and suddenly we found ourselves in the time after that terrible day. And it was a time to build a new world that we could live in. We did not need a big world, but we needed a world big enough. We did not need a world full of joy, but we needed a world with joy enough. And so we built it and we made it work. It was also better than living in a world only with sadness and fear and owl-like creatures with stretched out talons, razor sharp. It was during this time after that a part of me turned hard, unfeeling, and aloof. I continued to search for God during this time after, but God was nowhere to be found, nowhere at all. And I began to feel angry with God. I didn't like the anger I felt. I didn't like the hard, unfeeling part of me that was growing inside. I felt shame. And I was afraid others might see this part of me and be revulsed. So I hid my anger. I pushed it down deep into my soul.
That is so true. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And that's, it's the time of the grooming, then it's the time after. And we did come to that point where we had to build our own world or just be depressed for the rest of our lives. So we did. We just went on as best we could, like we had before. But that was tough too. And it was tough kind of living in two different worlds.
Oh, yeah. Right. And I think, here you express so well, I think the struggle that so many have that are loving somebody inside these groups that is so crazy making, where it's like you love and then you go, okay, now let's do something. And you try and you think and you're talking to other people and spending all this energy to try. And then you go through moments of just total depression because the trying didn't render anything.
Exactly.
And the ups and downs of this experience is just, really, I do think it's kind of a form of emotional torture,
It is I hadn't thought of it that way, but it is. It's emotional torture. So this leader was also, not only was she torturing all the people under her power, but she was torturing all the families too, because the families, we all got together from time to time and compared notes, and it was the same thing. Everybody was tortured by all of this.
Yeah. And I think, it also, I'd love to talk about this part of your story as well, Sarah, that the approach, I guess I would call it, or the experience / approach that you and your husband took was, because he was so involved in this, of course, with you. You mentioned that. Yeah, he really was an incredible support. And the two of you take this journey where really you tried from my outside perspective, you tried everything. You really tried everything. So it's like you could do the silent work, you could do the prayer and sort of self-management, but then there's all these practical questions, right? Like who connecting with the other people, connecting with people who get out and trying to figure out sort of what's going on. But then you all went as far as kind of hiring people to really help. And I think if I recall correctly, do you feel like, did that shift happen when you were starting to get information around the kids? Were the kids kind of the impetus for?
Well, she kept having kids. So, and every time one was born, there was a woman that I got real close to. She had 2 sons because my daughter was married to one of her sons, and her other son was married to this gets complicated. She was married to the other son, and she was the daughter of the leader. So I don't know if all that came out right, but she knew a lot. She knew a lot of people in the town where she lived, and she would, I don't know how exactly, but she would get tidbits of information which she would pass on to me. And so every time a child was born, she would tell me, such and such girl child or boy child was born on such and such day, and not sure their name, but I can get it from you. I have a friend that works in the hospital, kind of thing. And of course, that's probably not even legal, but she would get me information from people she knew that worked in the hospital, and I was grateful for that. So over the time, she had 6 babies, and the 5th one at some point I'll talk about. The 5th one did not survive, but and
this is your daughter.
My daughter, she had 6 babies. The 5th one did not survive. That's a whole horrible story that's in the next book. It's a very important story though. But and then she was one in this parent group, moms and dads, trying to figure out ways to get their kids out. Well, several of them were from this area, and they didn't want to go in and tell the police or whoever that this was happening in their family. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but they did not want to go in. One of them did go in with me one time. But it was rare. Usually it was Dennis and I, or I by myself, but there were a couple of times I found a Christian counselor, and there were several of us that went to see this Christian counselor, and he helped us all a lot. And then this one lady friend, the one that would give me tidbits of information, she and I, we tried to spy on the group. And she said, well, I just want to see my grandkids. I hope I don't get arrested. But we went over one night because our counselor was one wall away from where this group met. They shared a wall. And the counselor told us he could hear the screaming children and crying children all through the long services. So we decided, okay, well, we're going to go over. And if we hear it, we're going to try to record it. Well, so we bought some spyware kind of stuff. Of course, none of it worked. And we were in there trying to listen. Didn't hear a thing. So it's kind of a funny thing. I believe it's in this book. It's a funny thing because we were like spies. But
it is a funny moment, and it's a funny anecdote to the story.
It is.
But also, it really shows you, again, I so appreciate you sharing this, because these truly are the extremes that people go to when you're concerned or worried. And you guys were also getting information that stuff was happening to the children that really sounded unhealthy or abusive.
Yes. Sounded pretty abusive, and we wanted to find out for ourselves, but we never really did. We did see them come in because the offices were right next to each other, and it was at a strip mall. So we did see them through our door, come in one night, and we counted the children. They were all there. But that was the same night we had the key to get, and we were trying to spy, but that was it. That was all we saw. Yes. So anyway, and we decided, well, if anyone wants to arrest us or anything for spying, we'll just tell them that all we want to do is see our grandkids. That's it. So
yeah, so this might actually be a nice segue as well, especially for family members that are in a similar situation. People have a lot of considerations around kind of these legal moves.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you would speak a little bit to, some of the considerations or what you all went through in terms of legal considerations around the kids, or the grandkids, I should say.
Okay, well, legally, I got from my lawyer. We went through several lawyers, and they really weren't moving fast enough for us. It's like, you're moving so slow. Why can't you move faster? But we finally got one that moved pretty well. But bottom line was, and this is after we'd already spent a lot of money on lawyer fees. The bottom line was, if my daughter was 21 or over, there was nothing I could do to get her out. There's no legal way of getting her out, at least in this state. I don't know about other states. And the kids, yeah, they're all under 21, but she's their mother. Right. They can't just barge in and take them away, and they can't go and spy. And I mean, there's separation of church and state, so they can't just go in and take the kids out. We talked to Ellen. We talked to the Children and Family Services of our state. They weren't that interested either. They said they would try to help, but they never did. Even after I told them about some of the abuse going on that I got from this woman that I'm telling you about, and was all corroborated by my daughter, Annie, after she got out. All of the abuse that I said, did this really happen? Did this really happen? Yes, it all happened. It was horrendous. The children were very, very much abused mentally, emotionally, physically. But no one really wanted, and this is the biggest shock. Social services really, I don't know if their hands were tied or what the deal was, but they couldn't help us. We even went to the top guy that was over the whole state, and he said he'd call us back. He never called, and I kept calling him, would never return my call. So obviously he either didn't want to help or whatever. The police, I can't tell you how many times this one woman and I went to the police. They never helped. My lawyer helped a little bit. My private detective, who I, out of desperation, hired, spent more thousands and thousands of dollars. But he did help a little bit. He at least got information. He interviewed, I don't know, because he's a private detective. I don't know how he gets all his information, but he was able to interview people that had come out of the cults. Some of these people were willing to talk to him and tell him what was going on. Some were not, and just said, no, I'm not talking about it. That's a part of my life I don't want to think about anymore. So that was kind of it. But we did get and that's in this book, quite a bit of course, emails between that private detective and myself. He helped us a lot. He at least with him, we knew exactly what was going on. But it didn't matter. No matter how much they were abused, it would be my word against my daughter and her husband's word. And they would take and grandparents have no rights in the state. I don't know if they have any rights anywhere. So that, I don't know how many years we were fighting that battle, trying to move on with it. It ended up in a court before a judge, but it ended up thousands of dollars. And then the judge said, no, we can't move ahead on this because it's her word against yours. We can't take the kids. We don't know if this is happening or or if you're making it up, you know? So it was then, and this was about the 10-year mark. After all of that time, pushing ahead, nothing worked. We would get a little information here, a little bit of information there, but nothing that really was, that ended up being helpful. And then when the judge said no, there was a while that I just gave up for a little while. Gave up on God, gave up on everything. It was the end. I couldn't go on anymore. We certainly couldn't pay any more money. So that's something people need to be aware of. They may or may not want to take the legal route, but they don't know anything about cults either. No one hardly knows anything about cults, and whether it's cults or groups that are oppressive, it's all the same thing. It's somebody in power is controlling the people they're under, and that with fear tactics, among other tactics, and they somehow coerce or brainwash or whatever their minds to where those people really believe everything they say.
This is why we need coercive control written into the laws.
Yes.
And also awareness so that people are bringing coercive control experts into the courthouse.
Yes. And if there's ever a time I can help with that, I would be happy to, but I've never seen anything that, at one point, it was either the judge or the lawyer, I don't remember now, I think it was the lawyer, said, well, you could work with the legislature, our state's legislator, and try to get what you're talking about. I didn't have strength or energy to go on anymore. That was it. That was it. But I would be happy sometime down the line, as long as I'm still living, to do that. And my daughter might at some point be willing to do that. Annie might be at some point willing to do that. Right now, no, she doesn't like to think about it much. She said it hurts too much to think about it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you too about our son-in-law. He has, even though they got divorced shortly after they came out of the group, it's a whole nother story. This is in the second book. They got the divorce. He got custody of the kids because he had a job, she didn't. So that was a horrendous thing. But anyway, we got real close to him for a while again because he had all the kids. And so, we'd visit them, especially at school outings and band things or sport things or whatever. And he would just be so remorseful and apologize to us. He apologized to us many times for everything he had done. Yeah. So I don't know how many people feel remorseful when they come out and realize it was all fake, but I bet a lot of them do. If they come to that realization that everything that they were taught was fake, it wasn't true. And now that if they are so lucky to get out and come back home, they feel such guilt and remorse. And that's part of, and the kids may too, I don't know, because they didn't really know us before they got out. They didn't know any of the grandparents before they got out. So I don't know exactly how they feel, but they suffer in other ways. I can get into that sometime as to how my grandkids suffer in some ways. I think anybody who's been in a situation like that, they come out it. I think it's a lifetime thing. I think it'll always be in the back of, I know it'll always be in the back of my mind. It probably is going to be always in the back of your mind. And my daughter's mind, her ex-husband's mind, all the kids' minds with all that abuse they went through over the years, it just doesn't disappear. And none of them want to go to a counselor. There aren't very many counselors out there that know about these kinds of groups, number one. And number two, they don't really want to talk about it or think about it. And so the two boys, especially my two grandsons, are dealing with a lot of anger. They don't know what to do with themselves. They're doing okay, but there's a lot of anger in there that I can tell. Oh, I seem to go on and on.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Well, as you said too, with the anger and your own experience of the anger, which again, in that
Yes.
passage that I read, because it's so poignant, I think that's another feeling that people have a really difficult time with.
I like that
it's
word,
like,
poignant. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I use that word a lot for when like if a Hallmark movie comes on and it's poignant. Oh, Dennis, this is such a poignant part. You need to watch it. So for you to say that is like, sorry, I had to get that in.
Oh, that's cute.
Well, I don't know if it's cute or not, but it was, I had to get that in. You got to have a sense of humor. All of us that have struggled with any of this, whether we were in or out or half in or half out or whatever, we have to have, besides faith, obviously, we got to have a sense of humor too.
Isn't that true? My goodness. Yeah. Oh, right. So I was just speaking a little bit about the anger, that I think that's a feeling that people have such a difficult time with and struggle with. And that's why I so appreciated that piece that you just revealed, about even just kind of feeling shame around the anger, that I'm sure that is shared by so many others,
So, yeah.
And on the anger note, there was a passage that is poignant, and I wondered if you might possibly read for us on page 196. And I'm also happy to read it if you'd like that, where it begins, I want you to know that I am not angry with you.
Okay. Go ahead and read it.
Okay. Yeah, so you say, I want you to know that I am not angry with you about leaving us. I was never angry with you. I will never be angry with you. It was not your fault. It has never been your fault. None of it. I wish I could be with you. I wish I could see your face. Do you have tears there on your face? Tears for the baby you lost. Tears for me. Tears for yourself. Or do you keep the tears deep inside in a very dark place? If only I could reach out to you, but I cannot. Nor can you reach out to me. It is what it is, and I can only sit and wonder what you look like.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? It's almost more powerful for me to hear somebody read it, honestly. Somebody else read it besides me, because I know they believe me. They believe everything I'm saying, and I'm used to, over the years, I get the feeling of yeah, tell me another one. Yeah, I don't believe a word you're saying, but go ahead and say it anyway. I'll politely listen. I've gotten that feeling from so many people over the years that maybe there's some way, Jennifer, that through this podcast, I don't know what, through the books, through the podcast, through things you've done, that we can at least reach some people so they know what it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I do hope to offer a lot of educational components around all of this. Back to the kind of comment about therapists. I mean, even therapists aren't educated around coercive control and manipulation tactics. It's just not a part of the education. So really,
you can't blame them, but
no, certainly not. I mean, to no fault of anyone, it really is just a matter of education around a lot of these things. And I talk about that all the time in terms of preventative care.
Yes.
I'd really love to have this information out to kids in their senior year of high school, so that they just, get preventative measures in terms of understanding how these tactics work.
Yes.
Because this is we can't explain this in one sentence.
No. It has to be a series of several hours over a period of time. But it is like sending sheep out into a wolf's den when they graduate from high school, especially if they're going to go to college, anywhere. But my daughter and her to-be husband were recruited off of a major university campus.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it happens. It can happen anywhere.
Does. Yeah. In fact, colleges and universities are targeted.
I bet they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the kids are lonely. They miss mom and dad. They're just all of a sudden all these people around. They don't know how they're going to do at school and all this and that. And they're perfect for targeting.
Right. And you're really just coming into serious adult emotional maturity.
Yes. Yeah.
You're really still just kind of figuring things out.
Exactly. Yeah. They get them young. I think my daughter, well, like I said, she left home at 17. She graduated early from high school, or young from high school, I should say. She turned in her 17th year, or she was 18. And then she got pregnant right away. And of course, once they're pregnant and going to have their babies, the leader has a lot of control. Oh, there's so many stories about that first baby that was born.
And apologies for the cutoff there, but please stay with us for next week for part 2 with Sally Meyer, and we'll pick up just where we left off. We so hope that you enjoyed this episode, and please stay tuned for part of Leaving the Cult, the Season 2 song written by Jaya Suri. And for all things related to Jaya, her music, ways that you can support her, check out the show notes.